Thanks for watching. This video is all about doing your own complete makeover for ultimate speed. This is about getting as much speed as possible using tools that are, actually available, things we can actually use. The huge news in golf and everything right now is Bryson DeChambeau's crazy makeover. Visually, just looking at the guy, he went from looking like, a lot of PGA Tour players to looking a lot more like the guys we see on the long drive tour. It just looks like a totally different person. So at first, there's a lot of question marks in a lot of people's minds about, okay, well, how's this gonna work out? Because there's no other people that you can think of that a guy in a few months just completely transforms their body so much where you don't, and he said before he went into the break, he said, hey, I'm gonna come back and you're not gonna be able to recognize me. Like, he had a plan that he followed through. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that, but we're gonna talk a lot about things that are similar to what Bryson did, because I did some investigating and I did a lot of research on what he was actually up to. And I think there's ways that we can do that ourselves. So if you look at Bryson, his body has completely changed. But an even bigger change is his attitude and how he plays the game. And for somebody that is, had crazy success winning the NCAA and the US Amateur and 5 times on tour already, for him to say like, okay, well, I'm just gonna totally change the way I play golf based on some numbers crunching that he had done and some analytics stuff, looking at the analytics of really what shots matter and what shots matter less. And really where you can gain strokes on a PGA Tour field. He was, fully committed to it and said, I'm gonna come back as a different person. As visually different as he looks now, his actual style of play is a lot more different than just how he looks. Thinking about his change, a lot of people are saying like, oh, it's the workout, it's, being in the gym so much. But eating a ton and being in the gym, like if we do that at home, if you go to the gym a lot, and you put on a lot of weight, and even if you do like the Golfstick Pro or Super Speed Sticks or something like that, and you swing fast, you're not really gonna get that much of gains. The thing to know about Bryson that a lot of people don't think about is that he had 2 different swings already when he was on the tour. He always had his 119, 118 mile an hour swing that was more with the hands higher and a little flatter, always like on a single plane. He had that swing that he was using probably 90% of the time. And then he had a 125 mile an hour swing where he would let the elbow out a little bit more, it would come a little bit more across the line and the hands would get a little bit above this plane and he would just try to rip it. And so he always had that. So really now that he's swinging, now he's basically making that super aggressive, faster swing that he had in the bag before. He's making that swing basically on every driver tee shot, and he's changed some other things technically where I'll have some golf teachers on to talk about the technical differences he's made in his swing. But just realize that it's not like Bryson went from 118 to 132 or plus. It's more like Bryson went from 125, 126 to 132 plus. So it's a 7 to 10 mile an hour jump that he did, not so much like the 15 or 20 mile an hour jump that a lot of people are saying. So when you look at Bryson and you see him training, like in this video that he put up on his you see there's like over $100,000 worth of equipment there that he's using. He's using a force plate on the ground, which is very expensive, tens of thousands of dollars. He has the Foresight machine here, which is $18,000. He's got a gear system, which I'm not sure how much that is. That's like $30,000, something like that. And then he's got all these camera setups and other things like that. And I've been on a lot of this technology, and it's amazing when you're using it, especially again and again and again, how you can start to discover things that you may have discovered on your own on the range, but it would have taken about 6 months, and you can discover them in about like an hour and a half of hitting balls or an hour of hitting balls, where certain stomps or pressures or feels or different transitions will be a lot more you know, you'll just start to see like, okay, watch the numbers going up, and it becomes kind of a game of sliders and give and take of how you're gonna get there. The other thing I know is that Bryson has been talking to this one doctor for a long time called Dr. Robert Grober, and I'm going to put some of his video at the end of this video to try to explain some of the science behind the reasoning for why Bryson made some of the changes he made. But also too, because I think it can really help your golf game if you start to think of golf in a little bit different of a way.
So you can model this as just a mass and a spring.
What Dr. Grober really studied a lot when it comes to golf swing consistency and golf swing power is that golf is basically this thing called a harmonic oscillator, which is all that is like, say, a spring with a weight on it, okay? And basically, so the golf swing is a big spring that loads and unloads. And it'll move at its own kind of pace, but if you help it in a certain way, if you load it at a certain time and unload it at a certain time, which is called harmonic resonance, like a perfect, you know, ratio of force, which actually John Novosel from Tour Tempo led me on to all this stuff. It's basically, you want to use 1 times the force going back and 2 times the force going through. Now most people, what will they do? They'll have a really soft, weak backswing, and then they'll really all of a sudden try to gear up and pump it. Bryson has totally changed his tempo. There's 30 frames in a second of video. Bryson has changed his tempo now. So Bryson in 2018 was about 21 frames to go back. Now he is only 18 frames going back and 6 frames going down, which is ridiculously fast. It is like, so it's taking way less than a second for him to swing. Now when you put Bryson's swing side by side, his old swing is about here when his new swing is already here. So he's totally finished the swing when he's still in his transition in the old swing. So if that's true, that the golf swing is a spring, and I really believe that it is, then the harder and faster you pull back, then the harder and faster you can swing through. Here is how you can train that. It's really tough, but it's something that I don't think you might not have felt before. So what I have here, this is this swing speed radar thing. There's a link for it in the description. You can get it on Amazon. Most people, when they use this, they swing it down here and they measure their swing speed. And you take it out and you swing it again and again, and you see a lot of people using it like down there going, just looking at it again and again, and sometimes you make progress and sometimes you don't. But what I want you to do with this, instead of putting it there, put it right here. Because now Bryson's backswing used to be, I'm not sure, I'm trying to look into the numbers of it, but his backswing used to be somewhere around like 40 miles an hour, and now it's somewhere, I think it's somewhere around like 52 or 55 miles an hour, something like that. So he's increased his backswing a lot, the total speed. And one of the fastest parts of the backswing, it happens pretty quick right away. So for what you want to try to do is see how much speed your body can manage in the backswing. And that's one of the big reasons that Bryson bulking up and getting such huge arms and hands really helps you, because as you are managing this weight going back, you might be able to get it going fast, but you can see it gets kind of floppy up here, you know? If your arms are really strong, maybe you can keep it in control as you're making that backswing. So what I want you to do, is probably for the first time you're ever doing this, test yourself and put the swing speed monitor, so you're basically putting it just at like pocket high in the back there, and just make some backswings with your driver and see how fast you can get your backswing speed. So that was 43 miles an hour. 43 again. 53, there we go. 50. That's at 53. That's really hard to do. And this thing, it only starts reading at about 45 or so miles an hour. So for you might have to, and I think a good drill to do with it is put the club upside down and just see how fast, from a stop, how fast you can get that backswing. 61, 62, 64, 66. You can see footprints in the ground already, and you start using the ground and doing all that stuff you see the long drivers do, but you just do it intuitively. It's like, hey, I need to get this thing moving. I need to get it moving fast. 68. A lot of the stuff you say, hey, lift your heel to do this or stomp into the ground. Well, that stuff's just gonna happen if you have the right intent. And my intention is just, hey, let me get this thing moving. That was 70 miles an hour for a backswing. And one of the things that you'll find out, and it's amazing how Kyle Berkshire just came up with this on his own. When you do his stomp move, it kind of sets the spring into motion. There we go, 70 again. And you can see in Bryson's swing now he wants to be super, super precise. And he's got to be to be able to hit good drives on tour. He's not just trying to hit a grid. With Bryson, you can see he doesn't stomp like Kyle Berkshire does, which would be that. But Bryson does brace before he takes it back. When I went to Kansas and did that stuff with John Novosel and Dr. Rob down there, they were talking about IAP, which is something called Intra-Abdominal Pressure. So Bryson, in building his body up, not only has he made his spring faster, but he's made his spring a lot stiffer and stronger. So this IAP is called Intra-Abdominal Pressure, and basically right before you take it back, you're kind of breathing out, and you're tensing to get everything moving and kind of tighter. You know, before in golf we thought like, okay, we're going to be like real oily and like, you know, like there's this hot oil dripping through your whole body. Well, that's good for taking a nice long backswing, which is what you want. But if you want it all, you want to be real long and flexible and everything, but you also want to be very tight and fast, if that makes sense, because 53, that's really good for, 53 is really good for a backswing. See if I can do it more Bryson style, where he'll go brace and back. Yeah, 53 again, that was good. So that's one way you can use, like, you can get your tempo changed. The other thing you can use is the Tour Tempo app. It has the beats, and I'll play that for you now. So if I go here and I go to my Tour Tempo Total Game map, this is the speed of Bryson's backswing right now. Entire swing. So there's 3 beats, hear that? So the first beat starts you, the second beat is the top, and the third beat is impact. So this was Bryson before, okay? So look, watch. And this is Bryson now. You gotta be quick to catch up to that. It's really fast. So in that video, when you hear those guys saying, go, 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 and I had to confirm that when they're saying, go, 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 what they're saying is basically, when they're saying go, 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 that means once you start your backswing, like your downswing starts immediately. You gotta start going, going, going. You don't wanna be taking a lot of time. Bryson's not really thinking so much back and through, it's all through. So this back part is just to get really loaded. So when they're thinking go, once you take your backswing, you can't take a backswing fast enough and finish your backswing fast enough to be able to kill it. All this force you're creating right here, when this is going 60 miles an hour or something like that, right here, it's gonna bring you here, and then you finish it. So when they're saying go, it's like this, it's like, go, 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 go. So that's the story of Bryson's tempo. Okay, the other thing that he's doing, that you see there in his, in that super expensive setup that they have to rebuild the swing, kind of like Drago's setup in Rocky IV, is he has those force plates there. I know he's used the swing catalyst before. Those ones are called GASP, GASP. He's using those plates to feel how is he going to step into the ground and really use the ground to burst some extra speed. This is the way that you can do that. So what I got here is I just got some towels, some regular towels, and I put little T's where my feet are, right? So what I want you to do is get these towels and put them on the ground right where your feet would be, okay? And this one, I want to make it a little fatter in the toe of the lead one. I want you to get water and just make these real wet, okay? The point of this is, so now I'm stepping on these kind of sloshed up wet towels, and you could even have bigger towels than these, would probably be good too. So what I want you to feel is when you get to the point right here where the radar was and it's really fast, you're gonna step into this towel so hard that you're gonna imagine, and you can even hear it, that water is just like coming out of this towel hard. So if I fold this over here like this, put it there, and this one actually is a little bit more in the heel, but either way, see how when I do that, the water splashes out of there, and then after you make that first backswing, you're gonna really try to squish the water out of this one. There are studies and things that people have seen that the harder at this point right here, so you go back hard and you're squishing all the water out of this towel, and then you're in transition, the first thing you're doing is pulling down and just stomping that and getting all the water out of this towel here. So you can go. Yeah, it was good. That's 118. My normal is about 111, 112. But we can do a lot faster than that. All right, so to put those two cues together and really get a lot of speed, we're gonna make it the fastest backswing we can possibly make, and then stomp hard right and stomp hard left. So it's gonna be like this. Yeah, 120. See? And you see that a lot with some of the long drive guys and guys that hit the ball really far in the PGA Tour, like Justin Thomas and others. You see them, they push the ground so hard that they do jump at some point. But Bryson, who swings it faster than anybody on the tour, he actually doesn't get airborne at all. You see him finishing off balance quite a bit because he's here and he's stomping so hard in there, and then he's swinging fast. And then in order to protect, and then he's totally grounded. But in order to protect his knee, he has a little bit of a jump away move. Just because he's violently going that way. So you don't really want to jump away, because when you jump, when you think jump, you go this way. What you really want to do is I want to try to make the water come out of this thing, and I want to feel like I'm pushing this towel that way, hard and early. So not here, not there, which is when I first started doing this stuff, I thought it was about there that I had to push it, or about here. You actually have to push it when the club is perpendicular to the ground the last time, right here. That's when you should be pushing the absolute hardest. So it's basically immediately into your backswing. There's a stomp and a push. So it's here and stomp, and then it gets the water out, and then push hard. So 120 again. Might have missed that one. All right, the thing that I need to do more research about, which I haven't been able to find, but during the rain delay at the Hartford event, Nick Faldo they were playing an interview that Nick Faldo did with Bryson on the range, like, okay, like technically, what are you feeling differently? Like, what are you feeling? And the thing about Bryson DeChambeau making this change is the ultimate golf analyst and golf teacher Rorschach test, because everyone sees what they do and what they tell their students to do in what Bryson has done to change his swing. So the guy that is advocating whatever, more wrist set, he sees that. The guy that's advocating less wrist set. Here, they see that. Like the guys that are body swingers, they see that. The guys that are arm swingers, they see that. So it's the ultimate Rorschach test of like, okay, whatever I've been always telling you to do, that's what he's doing. So it's confirmation bias on another level. But one of the things that Bryson said, this is out of the horse's mouth, to Nick Faldo was, Nick asked him what he's doing in the transition. And Bryson said, and this is old school style, Bryson said from here, he is just pulling as hard as he possibly can. Take that for what it's worth. I mean, he is using his body a whole ton, but what his program is and what he's feeling is pulling. Okay, that could be a pull with the right arm, that could be a pull with the left arm, that could be a pull with both, but that's what he's saying he's doing. So for me, I mean, basically like my normal is 112. That'd be like a fast, normal, good one. And the fastest I ever did, in recent memory anyway, for clubhead speed anyway, was when I hit the ball 172 miles an hour at the Tour Tempo place in Kansas when I went there. That was a 117 ball speed. So I've already done 121 today. So you can basically do Bryson's, you can basically do about 60% of Bryson's insane transformation, and nobody has the equipment, the time, or really like, you know, the athletic ability that Bryson has. So you can do about 60% of it just by changing a few things. Make your backswing faster, but still control it, you know, within control. But make your backswing faster, use the ground better, and think a little bit differently about your transition and where you want the effort to happen. The effort kind of happens a lot earlier than you think. If you're here and you're waiting till about there to kind of put the hit into it, you know, with that late hit mentality, like Hogan said and other stuff, where you're kind of there and then you're kind of giving a thwick at the end, that's too late for a lot of speed. And I know, and there's a difference between the guys that are here and they're putting all the effort in right away, swinging too fast, too early, as somebody said on Instagram. There's a difference in that and having the right setup and the right intention so that you can swing fast and swing early and still have a decent golf swing. For me to really get this swing speed up, so I got a heart rate monitor on now, so I'm gonna get my heart rate above 100 to really try to make because I wanna get in the 120s. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna do some things to try to get my heart rate up. This is the Golfstick Pro, which I use, which is great. It's like the Super Speed Sticks, only it's all in one package. This end here, that's 103, is heavy. That's 110. It works on overspeed and underspeed training. You can, if you go to BeBetterGolf.net/pro shop, you'll see the lowest price anywhere on the internet for it is on there. And maybe I'll do a special like personal makeover price for it. So just check there and I'll make sure. But the way that I'm using this now is like, I don't swing this anymore in the backyard or like at the park or anything like this. The only time I'm swinging this is on the range when I'm hitting balls. Or really what I've been doing a lot actually is taking extra balls out to the course late in the day, because it's always got to feed back into the golf swing and what you can do on a golf ball. That's the light side. 122. 124. 128. 132. 130. I think that 132 is about as fast as I'm gonna get. What's my heart rate at now? 98. I need to get it over 100 though. So I want to get pumped up here. And I can't emphasize how much strong wrists, and because you might be able to build a lot of speed, but if you don't have strong wrists, hands, forearms, fingers, you're gonna see a lot of that floppiness at the top. You can see Bryson has real flexible wrists, and he's maintained his flexibility really nicely, but he's really in control of that club the entire time. Here, 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 here. But I'm talking too much. I'm not. All right, good. All right, so I got my heart rate now. I'm at 117 here, so I should be able to put up some big numbers. So the main thing I'm gonna be thinking to myself is go, 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 go. So I'm really gonna be thinking about my feet here, and let's put up a big number. Got my heart rate going pretty good. I wanna be in the 120s. 121. There you go. And you can see, if you can see my feet, and you'll see this when you watch long drive guys hit, that is, there's big footprints in the ground. Like a Sasquatch was here just stomping. So I got these things on my feet. I'm gonna try to turn it up here a little bit. 118. 119. Well, we can go faster than that. Okay, so move these because I got the feeling. I don't want to be off balance either, not anymore. So we're gonna go a little longer, a little faster. 124. That's what I'm talking about. So for me, and just thinking about the thoughts that this insanely expensive technology affords you, I was able to go from 112 to 124 in clubhead speed. Go again. Now, let's see how fast you can go if I really try to add some of that Kyle Berkshire stuff. The IAP, the intra-abdominal pressure, and the stomping. 122. All right, so summing up everything we've done in this really long, but I think like really valuable video if you want to get more speed. And we'll talk about hitting it on the button more, but this will show you where your potential can be. I mean, if we take 124 and you times it by 1.5, there's your potential ball speed. And that's extremely fast. That would be like crazy. But to be able to have that in the tank is really valuable. So putting this all together, you want to get fit while you stay flexible, all that stuff. But you really want to think about the golf swing as a spring. So you need your spring to be stronger and stiffer, and you also need to pull that string long. I mean, Tony Finau is a freak athlete, but even Tony Finau, he can do 180 ball speed from here, but when he goes to here and hits it, he can do 206 he put up on there. So it's a spring, so you want to pull it back fast and you want to pull it back far, and then you want to think about really using the ground in the right way. When you just do this, if all you do is this and just try to make from a dead stop a fast backswing, you can see how I'm using the ground here. And that would be a pretty darn good backswing. 126, I can do better than that. 135. So that would be really good. And then we have our pads using the ground forces where we're squishing the water out of these towels and we're squishing the water out of those towels here. And after we squish, as we're squishing, we're pushing, squish and push away this way. And the whole time, you got to keep the connection all the way through your body. It's no good to squish and push if you go and you're flopsy with everything. You got to be strong and kind of braced so that the transmission goes all the way through to the club. 121. And if I was going to do more of like a golf course shot, another great tool that I really recommend is get a lot of fake golf balls, you know, like these hacky sack style ones or other things like that, and get used to hitting these things straight, because there's just something about having the golf ball there, it just slows you down because of the expectations and wanting to hit it straight. You always throttle yourself a little bit. But if you're just hitting like one of these foam balls, like, you know that they're not going to be very good. So you just, you know, you're able to swing a lot more freely, and then you can transition it to a golf ball. So I'm going to go put it all together. Yeah, 121 with the actual foam, fake ball. Yeah, so we went from my normal, which is like 111, to 124. So when I'm able to raise that max to 124, that means that my normal now, I can live at like 117, 118 pretty comfortably. Because now, after doing all that training, and if I put my glove on, which is very important, because if you feel like it's going to slip, you're going to slow yourself down. So grips and gloves are really important to keep sticky and fresh. So now, me doing 118 is just going to feel like cruising speed. Well, that's 121 actually, so I meant to do 118, but so right now 116, and that doesn't feel that difficult. The main thing that I would have to do is I really want to get my hands and wrists stronger so that I can handle that pressure in the transition so it doesn't get floppy. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.
So we want to do this from a science perspective. Can we make a model of the golf swing which really has all of this science built into it? So who can tell me something that's real, the science thing or a physical thing that's really consistent, has exact tempo or keeps time the same way every single day? Anybody? Go ahead. A clock. Exactly right. So you can ask the question, you can maybe rephrase this and to say, you know, these golf pros kind of behave like clocks in the sense that they always have the same tempo. So you can ask the question, well, what's the physics of a clock? What's exactly the physics of a clock? So it turns out the physics of a clock is something that we have a big fancy name for it in science. We call it the harmonic oscillator. And a harmonic oscillator, another way of, so that's a big fancy word. And we use big fancy words as a means of job security in this field. But really it just means a mass and a spring. And a mass, so you know if you have like a slinky with a mass attached to it, you'll know that the slinky will bounce back and forth exactly, and it'll go back and forth sort of always at the same tempo. Now a spring is just an image for something that always pulls you back to the origin. So you can start at the origin, you can go away and pull, and the spring just always pulls you back. So it turns out that the model of the harmonic oscillator, or the mass and a spring, is a pretty good model for almost anything that once you pull it away from the origin wants to come back. So for instance, the pendulum. So what pulls the pendulum back to the origin? Gravity. Exactly. Man, that kid gets 2 t-shirts. So gravity pulls the pendulum back to the origin. So you can model this as just a mass and a spring. The mass is the mass of the club, and the spring is gravity pulling it back. Now, one of the properties that you notice about this is that this has a tempo that it wants to go at. And the tempo is defined by its mass, and by how hard gravity pulls back. And well, really it's its length, but we won't go there. But it turns out it has a particular frequency that it wants to go at. And we call this the resonant frequency. And this is what driving it at this frequency is what we call resonance. Now I can drive this at a different frequency. I can go much, 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 much slower. But you notice I have to grab on with my hand to do this. It takes a lot more energy to drive it really slowly. And you'll notice that it isn't as regular as if I just drive it at resonance. Because when it goes at resonance, it just goes at the frequency that it wants to go at. And I can do this today, and I can do this an hour from now, and I can do this next week, and I can do this when I'm in a good mood, and I can do this when I'm in a bad mood, and when I'm tired, and when I have a lot of rest, and it will always go back and forth at this pace. Because that's what it is to drive it at resonance. I can always drive it above resonance, and that looks horrible, right? When you drive it at resonance, it actually looks pretty smooth, and it doesn't really look like I'm working hard. And in fact, the way you find resonance is simply to figure out where you go back and forth, putting in the least amount of energy. So I can do this with 2 fingers. But if I try to move slower than that, I can't do that without holding on with my whole hand. It takes a lot more energy to do this. It takes very little energy to drive something at resonance. So resonance is really neat in that you don't have to use a lot of energy to drive things at resonance. and it'll always be very, very, very consistent. All right, so the harmonic oscillator. Now it turns out, we tell our students in introductory physics, you can model almost the entire world using the harmonic oscillator. In fact, you can spend your whole life as an engineer or a scientist and know no other model than the harmonic oscillator. In fact, I would argue it's one of the few models that we really know how to solve exactly. And so it's a wonderful model for the golf swing. You can ask yourself the question, are golfers clocks in the sense that they move the golf club like a harmonic oscillator, like a mass on a spring? Okay, so what would be the model of how a golfer swings a golf club? So you can imagine this is the golfer, and this mass here includes not just the club, but also the strength of the arm, the mass of the arms and the torso and the whole thing. And the spring is a combination of gravity and the muscles pulling back. And you can imagine that as you wind up the golf swing, that it's like compressing a spring. And you push back with a force. And then when you come down the other way, you turn the force around and push the other way. Right? So that's my model for the golf swing. You push back initially, and then you push down. Now, does anybody see that there's what we call an asymmetry here? If you look at the first time, you're pushing, are you compressing the spring or expanding the spring? So to begin with, you're pushing against the spring. And then afterwards, you're pushing with the spring. Right? And so let me do that again. So initially, you push against the spring. You compress it. And then you expand it. You push with the spring. And so that's a very different thing. In one case, you're compressing, the other expanding. And so it turns out you would expect that there's a difference in the amount of time to go back and the amount of time to come down. Right? If one case you're compressing the spring, in the other case you're going with the spring, there'll be a difference in time. And it turns out we can I'm not going to show this graph. It turns out we can calculate that. And it turns out that if you push back with exactly the same force that you push down, that the backswing will be twice as long as the downswing. And it turns out that if you push back with half the force that you pull down, and it pull down twice as hard as what you push back, the ratio of backswing to downswing will be about 3 to 1. And it turns out 3 to 1 is the ratio that we see for good golfers. That in those graphs that I showed you earlier, the amount of time to go back is about 3/4 of a second, and the amount of time to come down is about 1/4 of a second. And there's a ratio of 3 to 1. And it turns out the harmonic oscillator model says that if you pull down twice as hard as what you push back, you'll get the ratio of 3 to 1. So it actually looks like it might be a pretty good model. So we have reason to believe that it's useful, but we had to go measure that. Oh, so I started talking to people about this model for golfers as springs, and a lot of golfers said that that was crazy. In fact, I had one golfer look at me and say, a really, really great teaching pro, looked at me and said, "Look, no spring." Right? He was right. I mean, that's pretty distressing. I get this big model for how we're a mass on a spring and everything goes back, and he goes back and he says, "Look, no spring." Pretty hard to argue with that, right? So I went and started talking to lots of people about this, and in fact some professors here. And here's the thing where, how many people here are athletes? Okay, so here's the lesson I want you to take from this lesson, from this lecture, is that the thing that's different about elite athletes, the best athletes from everybody else, is that they learn to use their bodies as springs. That is, they learn to drive their bodies at the natural resonances of their body. It doesn't matter whether what you're doing is running or jumping or swinging a golf club. That elite athletes, the best athletes, work right at resonance. And they work right at resonance because it's the most efficient way to work. And that's why they always look so smooth. And they always look so graceful. Because they're working right at resonance. And everybody else looks klutzy. Because we're doing this. We're trying to go fast, and we're doing this. And really what we should be doing is this. And that's what you see in great athletes, that they all move resonantly.
Do you have an answer to the person who's swung back?
I do have an answer. You bet. So let me just show you that, in fact, we're scientists, so we have this idea that the body works like a spring, but you really want to prove that that's going to be the case. So you have to go back and figure out how to make a measurement to determine whether that's really how the body moves. So that's, in fact, what we did. And I'll just show you an example. So here was my laboratory. At one point in time, it was all filled with lots of wonderful optics, and we did all sorts of great optics of quantum mechanical systems. We had lots of big words that enabled job security, all of that stuff. But ultimately, we decided we had to make some measurements related to the golf swing, and so I moved all that fancy equipment out of the way and put up a golf net. And, okay, I kind of got away with that. So here's a golfer. This was a golfer from the Yale golf team. And we conceived of the following experiment. So if you're really a spring, if the torso really is a spring, let's apply a force and then watch how that spring moves, right? So if this is a spring, I can apply a force and watch how it moves. So we did the same thing with the golfer. We asked the golfer to apply a force back, but we had to measure that force first. So we attached a rope to the golf club, and it had a little sensor that measured how hard the person pulled back. And then while that person wasn't paying attention, we cut the rope. And so they'd be pulling back and pulling back and pulling back, and all of a sudden they'd move because the rope would get cut. And then we put a sensor on his back to measure how his body moved. Nothing you can't do with duct tape. So this is a sensor that's called a gyroscope, and a gyroscope measures how things rotate. So we had a little gyroscope on his back, and we had several people do this over and over again. We'd ask them to apply a force, big force, small force, we didn't care. We measured how big a force they applied, and then we watched how their body moved. And if it behaves like a spring, what do we know? The bigger the force, what will happen? If you apply a little force, how far will you move? A little bit, right? If you apply a bigger force, what will happen? Bigger, right. So the bigger the force, the further the body would move. But what about the tempo? Should the tempo matter whether it's a little force or a big force if it's really moving at resonance? No. What grade are you in? You are good. You are good. So right, it shouldn't matter whether you apply a big force or a small force. If the body is really moving at resonance, then it should always be the same amount of time to go back. So that's the experiment we did. And I'll just show you, here's some data. So this is the rotation of the body. This is standing still. And this would be in the backswing as it winds up. And this is the number of degrees. So this torso wound up about 70 degrees. And then it started to come down. And all we did first off is measure how far back does it go. And remember, the more force, the further back it should go. And the other thing we measured is how long it took to get all the way back. Now, how long? It should always take the same amount of time to measure how much force you apply. And so this is the amount of force we apply, and this is how long it took them to wind up. And what you see is, even as you change the amount of force by a factor of 5 or 6, really make the force much bigger, that it always takes about the same amount of time for them to wind up. And that's a pretty good indication that they're working just like a spring, because that really is a property of the spring. Doesn't matter how much force you apply, it's always going to take the same amount of time to wind up. And the other thing you learn is that the amount of time to wind up is about 3/4 of a second, which is what? It's the amount of time for the backswing in a good golfer's backswing. So pretty good indication that, in fact, when a good golfer makes a backswing, really what they're doing is they're winding up the spring resonantly. And then this curve is how far the torso moves, depending upon how much force you apply. And what you see here is that, in fact, if you start with little force and then start applying more force, the torso winds up further and further, but there's a limit to how far your torso goes, right? You can't wind up all the way around. That would be a nightmare. So in fact, what you find is that it kind of falls off here. Now, biomechanics people have measured this. They invented these torture devices, which they use with their graduate students. And they seat the graduate students here, and then they start to apply force, and they see how far the graduate student winds up as a function of how much force they apply. There are some grad students back there. Okay. So I just want to show you this data. So this is how much force they apply, and this is how far their torso rotates. And this is measurement done by real biomechanics people. And in fact, you can use that data to explain our data. In fact, how the torso really winds up. But to first order, the torso really does behave like a spring. And And we believe, in fact, that's why it is that that really great golfers and great athletes generically are good at what they do, that in fact they learn to operate resonantly. And in the case of golfers, really great golfers, they learn to drive their golf swing resonant with the resonant frequency of the torso, the arms, the hands. The whole thing has a common resonant frequency, and that's where they drive it. Now, as for the question of the answer to the question of my friend, look, no spring. The answer is, I can do that with this too. I can drive this resonantly, or I can hold it here, right? You can teach your body to drive the body resonantly, or you can do all sorts of spastic things and have muscles fire in all sorts of crazy ways that don't drive it resonantly. And you end up with stuff like this. And that's what most people do. Most people are never in touch enough with their body to actually drive it resonantly. That is, push back when it wants to wind up and push back down when it wants to go the other way. Most people push back and keep pulling and stop and then come down in some sort of crazy fashion that isn't resonant, that doesn't lead to consistency.
So he was exhibiting non-harmonious.
He was exhibiting non-resonant behavior. And so we've shown that this is true for the golf swing. We've also shown that this is true for the putting stroke, that the very best putters in the world drive their putters resonantly at the resonant frequency of the putter in a very specific way.